Okay, let's unpack this. Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're getting into a really significant geopolitical flashpoint, maybe one of the biggest this year. The U.S. administration's sustained and very acknowledged pursuit of Greenland.
It's a huge story.
It is. Our mission here is pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
We need to analyze the full range of options the White House is considering. And that includes, and this is incredible, the outright threat of military force.
Which is just staggering to hear said out loud.
It is. And then we have to evaluate what this whole strategy means for the unity and, the stability of the NATO alliance itself. This is really a story about strategic ambition just colliding head-on with these foundational principles of sovereignty.
International law.
Exactly. We have to start with what is probably the most startling admission in the sources we have. The White House officially, on the record, confirmed they're discussing multiple options to acquire Greenland. They've officially designated the territory a national security priority. And then, in a statement that just raises the stakes immensely, they clarified that the use of the military is always an option for the commander-in-chief.
What's so fascinating here is just the sheer audacity of the position. I mean, this isn't some kind of theoretical speculation or a rumor.
No.
It's an acknowledged U.S. government policy objective. And it's directly targeting a territory that belongs to a NATO ally, Denmark.
A founding member.
Right. And that instantly forces us to ask these really fundamental questions about, alliance cohesion, what does mutual defense actually mean, and what are the limits of international law when a superpower decides that strategic goals just outweigh everything else?
That's a critical distinction to make. So, okay, let's explore the rationale. Why this intense focus on Greenland right now? Our sources connect this ambition to the highly visible U.S. military intervention in Venezuela not that long ago. You remember where elite U.S. soldiers arrested President Nicolas Maduro?
Yeah, that set a huge precedent.
It really did. That event clearly established a precedent for decisive, sort of unilateral U.S. action in these contested geopolitical spaces.
And then right after that, we saw the social media piece.
The social media post, yeah. Just a day after that high-profile action, you see the post by Katie Miller, wife of senior aide Stephen Miller, showing a U.S. flag-colored map of Greenland labeled with just one word, soon.
I mean, that's not subtle. It was a very public signal of intent coming right on the heels of a major military action.
Absolutely.
And to place this in a policy context, the administration has been remarkably blunt about this. We have confirmation directly from Stephen Miller, who affirmed that the, and I'm quoting, official position of the U.S. government is Greenland should be a part of the U.S.
It's a stunningly direct statement.
It is. That level of strategic confidence is clearly designed to intimidate, particularly when he added that no one would dare fight the U.S. over the future of Greenland.
And this isn't just messaging from, political staff. We have Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, who, while testifying before Congress last summer, confirmed that the Pentagon has plans for every contingency regarding forcibly taking Greenland if it becomes necessary.
Right. So that tells you the military planning is already integrated into the system. This is not just an empty threat. It's a live option.
It's a live option.
So if we shift the focus a little bit from the threat of force to the calculation of strategic gain, the motives really start to crystallize.
Right. Because while Trump's famous 2019 quote framed it as just a great real estate deal,
which was sort of absurd, but
it was. But the deeper geopolitical concerns that are articulated by the U.S. State Department are far more serious.
Okay, so what are the key strategic worries that the State Department is really focusing on here?
Well, they noted that common adversaries, and they mean Russia and China, are becoming increasingly active in the Arctic. This region is now viewed by Washington as really the next great theater for strategic competition.
And it's not just security.
Not at all. Beyond the immediate security concerns, there are these massive long-term economic draws. Greenland holds significant untapped reserves of rare earth minerals,
which are absolutely critical for modern high technology, for everything from phones to missile systems.
Everything. And the rapid melting of the ice sheet is increasing the viability of new trade routes right across the top of the world.
So we're seeing a highly aggressive carrot and stick strategy then.
It seems that way. A confluence of strategic necessity, resource control, and climate change, opening up new geopolitical choke points.
And facing this, the White House has opened up several different avenues for acquisition. It's not just one path.
Precisely. The sources we have reveal two major non-military paths that officials are discussing. One is outright purchase, and the other is signing a free association treaty, or FAT, with Greenland.
So for listeners who might not be immediately familiar with that mechanism, how does a free association treaty actually differ from an outright purchase?
A FET, like the ones the U.S. already has with, say, Micronesia or Palau, is a kind of quasi-sovereign relationship. It essentially gives Greenland internal self-governance, but the U.S. would assume full responsibility for defense and foreign policy.
And crucially, it gains preferential access to the territory for military and commercial use. So it's a path to integration without full annexation.
Exactly. But regardless of the mechanism, the immediate cost of this approach is obvious. This strategy instantly puts strategic geopolitical goals way above established allied relationships and, fundamental international principles.
And that pressure strategy, it immediately triggered a major reaction from the Allies.
It did. Let's dig into that unified backlash because it was swift and it was significant.
It really was. We saw a joint statement issued by 6 key European allies, the UK, France, Germany, Italy, Poland, Spain, and Denmark, of course.
Right.
And they delivered this very clear counter message that hits right at the core issue of sovereignty and, adherence to international law.
They insisted that Greenland belongs to its people and that only Denmark and Greenland can decide their relationship. And while they acknowledged that they share the U.S.'s security concerns in the Arctic, they made it really clear that action has to be taken together by NATO allies.
And this is the crucial part. This is what cuts to the heart of the NATO Charter. They specifically called for maintaining the principles of the UN Charter, including sovereignty, territorial integrity, and inviolability of borders.
So they're explicitly using the language of foundational international law to push back against a supposed ally.
An ally, that's the key. And the intensity of this rift was just underscored when the Danish Prime Minister, Mette Frederiksen, warned that any U.S. attack would lead directly to the dissolution of NATO.
I mean, that statement just defines the severity of the crisis. It's an ultimatum.
It is. The European position is entirely centered on the sanctity of international law. The sources emphasize that violating the territorial integrity of Denmark, an active NATO member, fundamentally undermines the alliance's entire founding premise.
Which is mutual defense against an external attack.
An external attack. So this raises a really serious internal question. When a superpower uses its own definition of national security as justification to threaten the sovereignty of a treaty ally, does the alliance still hold its meaning?
Right.
The allies are suggesting that if Denmark's borders are not inviolable against the U.S., well, then no member's borders are safe. And that effectively renders the treaty meaningless. The threat shifts from outside the gates to inside the house.
That's the perfect way to frame it. Okay, so amidst all this high-level policy friction, we have to turn the spotlight onto the 57,000 residents of Greenland.
Yeah, the people at the center of all this.
To understand their position, we need a little context. Greenland has had extensive self-rule since 1979. Denmark retains control only over defense and foreign policy.
But what's critical here is that even though a majority of residents favor future independence from Denmark, there is strong opposition to the idea of becoming a U.S. territory.
And their reaction wasn't just, political disagreement. The sources say it was profoundly emotional. The U.S. treating their home like a piece of real estate sparked real fear and a sense of violation.
We have a specific and very powerful emotional reaction from Morgan Angaju, a 27-year-old Inuit. He told reporters that it was horrifying to hear the leader of the free world talk about them as if we were something to seize.
So that quote, it's so easy to focus on the policy papers and the strategic calculations, but that something to seize that really humanizes the fear that this kind of ambition causes.
It does, and Angaju provided some really powerful cultural context. He said that Kalalat Nunaat means the land of the Greenlandic people. He's essentially putting up a cultural shield against the U.S.'s real estate view.
Yeah.
He's insisting that they are people, not property, and that this is enshrined in their very identity, and that fear is palpable. Angaju expressed worry about the possibility of the Greenlandic Prime Minister sharing the fate of Maduro.
Arrested and removed.
Or even the U.S. simply invading our country. This shows how that military posture is immediately translated by the local population into a real existential security threat.
The official Greenlandic response, which was delivered by Prime Minister Jens Frederik Nielsen, it mirrored the European stance with a call for respectful dialogue based on international law.
And you can see the public sentiment on the streets. Back in March of 2025, 1,000 residents protested these U.S. threats.
Which, when you consider the small total population, is a significant turnout. It's a clear expression of opposition.
The tension between that superpower strategic calculus and the right to self-determination just couldn't be clearer. The local response demands respect for sovereignty, while the U.S. sources show a policy that treats the land purely as an asset.
And yet the diplomatic maneuvering is still continuing alongside all the threats.
Right. Both Denmark and Greenland have requested an urgent meeting with U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio to resolve, as they put it, certain misunderstandings.
So they're signaling they remain open to dialogue, even while they stand firm on their sovereignty.
Exactly.
So what does this all mean? At the end of the day, we have a massive internal division inside the Western alliance over the fundamental definitions of security and sovereignty. And to balance the picture, it's important that we include the Republican counterargument here. Senator Eric Schmidt of Missouri suggested that the U.S. is, in his words, just negotiating hard.
Okay.
He said he hopes Europe understands that a strong America is a good thing, good for Western civilization.
So that view attempts to reframe the aggressive posturing as, necessary hardball diplomacy, the argument being it serves a greater Western strategic good in controlling the Arctic against encroachment by Russia and China.
Exactly. So the core conflict remains.
Yeah.
Is this truly an aggressive escalation, one that threatens to dismantle NATO's founding principles? Or is it merely hardball diplomacy aimed at pushing Denmark and Greenland into a favorable purchase or treaty agreement?
The sources really compel us to hold two conflicting viewpoints at the same time. On one side, you have the official White House recognition of the military option confirmed by the Defense Secretary and the stated strategic need for Arctic control.
Right.
But on the other, you have this unified European defense of UN Charter principles and the existential threat of NATO dissolving if the U.S. follows through.
A real standoff.
It is. And the fact that the administration is actively pursuing commercial and diplomatic relations alongside the aggressive posturing, well, it indicates that the policy objective is highly strategic and multi-pronged. They're seeking control without necessarily defaulting to destruction.
So what's the final thought for the listener?
The crucial pivot and the final thought for you, the listener, is this. The ultimate test here is not whether the U.S. can acquire Greenland. It's how NATO handles this internal challenge. Will the alliance ultimately prioritize immediate geopolitical gains in the Arctic, effectively validating the use of threats against its own allies?
Or will it uphold that foundational principle of defending every member's territorial integrity?
Exactly. Which outcome represents the greater long-term security risk for the West? That's the real question.
That is the question that defines the future of the alliance. Thank you for sharing your sources and engaging in this deep dive into the geopolitical friction around Greenland.
Of course.
And if you want to dig a little deeper into that commercial angle, maybe consider this. What are the specific rare earth minerals found in Greenland? And how critical are they, really, to the global supply chain that could justify such high-stakes diplomacy and the threat of NATO dissolving? Something to mull over.
A very good question.
We'll catch you on the next deep dive.